Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Tish. It's been 2 weeks since I uploaded a video, but here we are. In this video, I am going to be talking to you about how God told me his call for me to move to Houston would make me immediately fruitful and very fruitful, very fast, rapidly fruitful, very quickly. So I'm going to share that with you. There's a plot twist here though. So stay tuned for that tea. Let's get into it. In August of 2022, on a trip visiting Houston, actually, God told me that Houston was about to be my home and sooner than I think. The very next year, in August of 2023, I was living in Houston. And so I was living in Houston temporarily for like 6.5 months. I didn't know at the time that it would be a temporary move and that God would send me back later permanently. So that is going to happen. I will be moving back to Houston and it'll be permanent until God says otherwise, but yeah, it was like a trial run to prepare me for the future permanent move that is to come. Right? So when God told me, when God revealed that to me, that same night? No, the very next night, God gave me a sign that, moving to Houston would make me rapidly, immediately fruitful. And that sign was interesting. That sign was actually through one of my reels going viral. Viral for me. Technically, the numbers might not be considered viral, but the number was viral for me because at the time I only had about 130 something followers on Instagram. So I made a reel, and it was the only reel I ever made outside of New York because I was in Houston. So I made this reel in Houston, and when I checked about 3 hours later, my reel with only 136 followers, I think, had 13,000 views. And here's the thing, I happened to check 3 hours later and it was already at 13,000 views, which means that it hit 13,000 views before the 3-hour mark. And so by the next morning, a couple of hours later, it was another 2,000 views, and then over time it was another 4,000 views. And so that video has 19,000 views, and to this day, 2 years later, no other video of mine has come close to that. And so I was just like, okay, it felt so miraculous to me. It really did. And I'm like, God, what does this mean? Like, and God revealed to me that me being in Houston and connected to Houston, it is going to immediately make me very fruitful. And so the fruitfulness was the numbers that the video did, right? And the fact that I did the video, I made the video in Houston, speaks to Houston, and the fruitfulness was about the numbers. That's the correlation, right? And so I was like, wow, it's up for me in Houston in a good way. I was like, oh, my hair health about to be restored because I do deal with traction alopecia. So I was like, oh, I feel like I said that with an accent. I was like, oh, my hair health about to be restored within like 3 months because I have traction alopecia. I was like, oh, I'm probably gonna have a good job with like great pay. I was like, oh, and I'm gonna get a car too. Probably be able to get a car. My YouTube gonna take off. I might grow a little platform, etc. Right? I'm like, oh, this gonna be cool. I'm excited to get to Houston. My life about to change. And it did. Like, God did not lie. In fact, things started changing for me, before I even got to Houston technically. I started seeing fruit. So here's a plot twist. When God told me this, before I even get into the plot twist, when God told me that, I'm going to be fruitful immediately, it's going to be rapid, it's going to be a lot of fruit, right? God also told me and showed me and gave me a sign, all of that stuff, that he favors me. That he favors me, and there was going to be like, prosperity in my future. So I'm like, okay. So I'm like, Houston looking real good for me. And then, the plot twist happened, and I moved to Houston. And for the the first time ever in my life, and hopefully the only and last time, I was looking at God like a liar. I felt like God was a liar. And I felt betrayed by God, and I felt like God wronged me, and I felt like God deceived me. And I was really looking at God for all the things that he truly isn't. But in that moment, I was eyeing him. I was like, no way a good God brought me to this. So here's what happened, and this is explained in detail in, the videos that I've done about Houston, which I'll put them on the screen. Can't remember if I did that earlier, but they're on the screen here. Go watch those videos for full detail. The apartment was disgusting. The building, though it looks nice, all the apartments, the building just had a roach infestation, right? And then my particular apartment was not cleaned for me, and it was not repaired. Everything that was in it that was broken was still broken when I moved in. It was not clean. It was just disgusting. I was looking at God. I was like, God, you look like a liar. I was like, this don't look like I'm favored. This don't look like I'm finna prosper. And that was just my first day. Over the 6.5 months that I was there, it was hell. It was crazy. It was crazy. And I'm like, God, I feel like a bum. But you told me that I'm going to be prosperous. You told me I'm going to be fruitful. But I'm struggling financially in this way and that way. It's crazy, right? And so I knew I was misunderstanding something, because God is none of the things that I was like almost thinking of him as, right? So I'm like, what am I not understanding? Because you look like a liar, but I know you ain't. And you look like you did me wrong, but I know that you could never do us wrong, because you can't sin against us, right? You're holy. So what am I not understanding that got you looking crazy out here, right? And I remember being so frustrated with God that I had the audacity to tell him one time, I was like, you gonna look like the fool. Like, if this don't work out, I don't even care. I'm not gonna take on that burden of feeling like I look bad and like I failed. You gonna look like you failed. You gonna look like the fool. That's how mad I was, that I really had the audacity to say that, but here's the plot twist though. The whole time I was in Houston, even before I even got to Houston, it was this whole Houston thing. It's the closest I've ever gotten to God. It's the quickest I ever grew in my faith. I was promoted in the spiritual realm, evidenced by a demon attacking me because I didn't give up and I stayed obedient to God no matter how hard it got for me in Houston. The enemy, the devil, his demons got so mad I physically was attacked by the enemy. Violently kicked out of my sleep. I thought someone broke into my house and was about to harm me. I woke up expecting to see someone standing over me. That's how violent and aggressive that kick was. And I have a reel about that. And so, bro, it was up for me in Houston spiritually. You couldn't tell me nothing. I literally became a giant in the spiritual realm, right? I'm talking about, it's to the point where demons can't attack me the same anymore. And I walk more fully in the spiritual authority that I have as God's daughter, as someone that God knows. Like, I'm not finna hear depart from me. And I'm not saying that arrogantly. I know who I am. I know where I am in the spiritual realm. And we all should be that way when it comes to our walk. Like, you understand what I'm saying? You can't tell me nothing. I am more serious about God than I ever been. I'm way more serious about sound doctrine. Because if you don't have sound doctrine, you ain't really knowing God. And I get riled up, like you see. I'm not here to play spiritually. That's where I'm at right now. That's where Houston brought me. You know what I'm saying? If it wasn't for Houston, I would not be where I'm at spiritually. So was there fruitfulness? Yes. Did it happen very quickly? Yes. So when I was in Houston and God revealed this, to me, it was August. My full, complete transformation changes started happening immediately, like small changes. But the fullness of my change, of my sanctification, of my turn, like the full change happened at the end of January when I was done fasting. That's 4 months after August. August, September, October, November, January. Well, August, sorry. September, October, November, December, January. 4 months later, I'm a completely different person. I changed so quickly that it was actually very scary to see how different I was. It was very scary to see how different I was. So God wasn't lying when he said, oh, I'm about to be fruitful. I'm about to be very fruitful, and immediately, fast. It's going to be quick. And that was quick, because some people go their whole lives trying to get closer to God. It takes people years to get closer to God. And I promise you, it took me 4 months. I'm just sitting and pausing because I want us to really reflect on that. And so I remember thinking about it not too long ago. I said, wow, God, you know what? I didn't think about it this way. You were actually telling the truth. I did become fruitful. There was a lot of fruitfulness because of Houston, and it did happen very fast. It happened very fast. And I was just like, wow. So here's the lesson. My encouragement to you is that a lot of times, you know, when God tells us, you know, he about to make things pop off for us, like he about to, you know, make us prosperous and fruitful and all these things, we immediately think, you know, materialism. Like we immediately think materialism, and when things don't go the way we thought they would go or even hoped for them to go, we start looking at God sideways, or we start getting down. And it's like, first of all, you know, don't be in your feelings because you misunderstood something. Like, God ain't wrong. Take it from me. If you find yourself starting to think these crazy things about God because you are living in adversary that is so completely contrary to what God says, I'm telling you, don't do it. You are the one that's misunderstanding something, because God can't lie and he's holy, so he cannot sin against you. He can do you no wrong. So when you feel like God has done you wrong, you need to stop and say, hold on, God, what am I misunderstanding? If you feel like God lied about something, you know, or you feel deceived about something, you need to say, God, what did I misunderstand? Because I'm here to be honest with you. You got it wrong. You got it wrong, right? So what happened is you misunderstood what God said, or even worse, you didn't even hear God at all, and you put God's name to the voice that you heard. The voice was either your own voice because of what you are desperate for, or it was the voice of the enemy trying to deceive you. I'm here to tell you that strongly, but with love. Because I don't want people to be deceived because they are so self-centered that they are putting their own desires above God's will. And so anything that they think is a plan for them, they throw God's name to it. And it might not be him. Let me tell you something. When God calls you to something, when he truly calls you to something, he's going to give signs, and it would be fruitfulness to it. Whenever God is involved with something, things grow. It's fruit. It's fruit. If you didn't see fruit from anything that you think God has called you to, he might have not called you to it. There is fruit. So there's fruit. There is tangible, evident, physical, material proof, or there is a spiritual proof in fruit, right? And so, yeah, I was supposed to be in Houston. And the proof of that is that there was growth, and there was fruitful growth spiritually. That's proof. Because a lot of times we be in a funk because we really misunderstood God or never truly heard him at all. And I just want us to be aware of what God actually says to us and to not be deceived by our own personal desires or by the enemy. And so this is my encouragement to you. That's what I wanted to share. I had that realization. I thought it was so dope. And it might sound discouraging because a lot of people, and let's be real, we like, all right, who cares? All the spiritual character growth, woo woo. But God, what do I have to show for character growth? Like, I'm going through hell. You know, I got all this character growth in spiritual maturity, but I got no money to my name. Or I'm struggling here and there. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. I hear you and I understand, but the worst place you can be is to have all those things and to not be where you should be spiritually. That's the worst thing, and it should be actually very scary. It should be scary and haunting to you to think about the possibility of being outside of God's will. There is a layer of protection that you do not have when you are not in God's will. And so I think that we should consider that. And also we need to be, or learn to be, train ourselves to be more heavenly minded. Because think about it. They say, I don't know the statistic. I'm just throwing something out there and I'll correct it, in the video. They say the average lifespan is maybe like 80 to 90 years. It's about 80 to 90 years. And so a lot of time when we gain the materialism that we want and the blessings, the physical blessings and all that stuff in this life, a lot of time for the average person, if you're not like a celebrity, I'm assuming for the average person, a lot of us wouldn't obtain those things to maybe like our 30s, or something like that. And I'm like, if the average lifespan is about 80 to 90 years and we don't obtain a lot of these material blessings until our 30s, we enjoying them for an average of 60 years, and then it's gone. But God says when we are where we need to be spiritually, though we may suffer and go through trials and tribulations on this earth, but where we need to be spiritually, we are storing up for ourselves in heaven treasures there. So we might not experience those things here. We might not get the material things that we want here, but in heaven, they'll be there for eternity, compared to some 60 years you enjoyed them on the earth that you're not even a part of. Like, what are we talking about, right? And it's easier said than done. It really, really is, but it takes so much power and empowerment from the Holy Spirit and spiritual maturity to really be like, yo, if I die without these things, I'm good, as long as I hear well done. And that's why I'm here trying to encourage you to make sure you are actually hearing God's voice and that you are hearing his voice correctly. Because if you're not, then you might not even know God for real. Because if you're not hearing his voice, then how do you know him if he ain't the one that you think you're talking to? The worst thing we can hear when we get to heaven is, depart from me, I never knew you. And if you running around this life thinking everything you heard is every voice you heard or every thought you got is God, and you think you're talking to God and it's not because you don't know how to properly discern his voice, you might get to heaven and hear that, and that's not what I want. So sound doctrine is important because it's his will above our own desires. And we got to be able to discern when God is saying something to us, when he's the one that's actually speaking, and when he is speaking, we got to be able to discern what he's actually saying and to not, to not get it messed up, though we will. But that's why we have to be praying for discernment. I did not mean to talk this long, but I needed to get out everything that I got out. And so let this video encourage you. Study sound doctrine. Ask God to help you learn his voice, hear his voice correctly, and when you get it, when you get it messed up, or when things start to look confusing, that goes against what you think he said, ask the Holy Spirit for confirmation and to redirect you, right? But also, assess correctly. Again, use discernment. Just know what God said and what he meant, and, be encouraged when things feel hard because you're not experiencing materialism or earthly blessings. You know, examine your spiritual life. Are you growing and experience blessings spiritually? Then God didn't lie. And you actually obtained a more valuable blessing. And that still don't mean that you're void of something materialistic. It's just that your material blessing might not be on this land, but it might be in our true home for eternity. And we just might not get it now while we're here, right? And so, very real reality. Might be a little sobering, but we need to hear it sometimes. So let my story be an encouragement to you. If you want to speak more in detail, or you need a little more encouragement, and you have questions about things that maybe I've never addressed in any of these Houston videos, you can message me, you know, on my Instagram here. And, you know, just be very specific at the beginning of the message that, you know, you are messaging me, you know, about some questions on faith moves based on my moving to Houston videos. Like, if I see that at the beginning of the message, I'll be sure to respond. I'll make it a priority. So thank you so much. I'm praying for everyone that watched this video. Thank you for being subscribed to me. I know I don't post often, literally maybe twice a month, every 2 weeks, but thank you for rocking with me with this current schedule that I have for my channel. I appreciate it. You know, I don't always feel heard or seen or valued. So when you watch my video and you truly watch it and pay attention, you truly take in what I say, it's wonderful to me. It really is. And at the end of the day, it really ain't about likes. The likes could mean nothing. Like, you know, the views could mean nothing. The comments could mean nothing. And I barely get engagement on my videos, but if you're impacted, that's what matters. Like, real talk. So thank you. Thank you. I will see you in the next video.